drinking water since October of '09, so going on a few years now. And I think some of you do know that the Oak Shore system used to be regulated out of the San Diego district system, and then the View system used to be regulated by the county system. And when the county gave back their program, we created the new Imperial District, and both of those systems came under my jurisdiction, which is why I'm here today. Okay, so starting with Lake Morena View system. So currently there's 4 wells, 3 active, 1 standby. They're aging. There's also some pipelines that leak, valves that haven't been maintained and need to be addressed, hydrants that won't supply adequate pressure for fire, and then 2 tanks that need to be addressed. They're planning on doing a new tank to replace the 2 existing tanks that are in disrepair. And that'll be a new 100,000 gallon storage tank project that's currently being worked on. There's also currently no backup power supply to the wells. And they're putting in an interim treatment plant for nitrate, and we'll do some uranium removal too, and population service connections, so 360 population and 125 service connections for the View system. So taking a look at the Oak Shore system, they currently have 5 wells. They just installed a new treatment system in 2014. They've done a number of improvements for the tanks. They're currently meeting the maximum day demand, so that is a requirement in the regulations. And they have 670 population for just under 200 service connections. So I think most people are aware that unfortunately things don't last forever and equipment needs to be replaced over time. Tanks, distribution systems, those all need to be maintained and replaced when they get to past their useful life. So there's some typical life expectancy up on the slides, so you can take a look at kind of what we expect things to last for, and then you can see, when things were put in for the View system. So Lake Morena Views does exceed nitrate and uranium. They have high levels of uranium. The violation of nitrate has been ongoing since 2019, and this is an acute standard, so this is something that can make people sick pretty quickly. Blue baby syndrome is kind of often referred to for nitrate, and so that is definitely a concern that we want to see addressed. Okay, here are some graphs of the different wells and their nitrate levels. You can see some fluctuation, and the different wells all have slightly different variations in nitrate, but you can see that red line going across, that's the MCL, which means that for it to be considered safe, it would need to be below that red line. And then same thing, uranium. Uranium is not an acute standard, it's what we consider a chronic standard, so that one you have to consume for quite a longer amount of time to consider it a risk, but we still want to see that addressed too. You can see that some of the wells do periodically go above the MCL for those. And I broke it. Facebook? Okay. So what for all water systems, we want to make sure that there's appropriate technical, managerial, and financial capability. And what that means is that a water system can operate and maintain their system. They can have certified operators who know what they're doing to run the treatment plants, that they have adequate managerial to run the water system, and that they have adequate financial capacity to both take in money and then use those funds appropriately to cover the expenses of the various things. So that is a requirement for all of our water systems, is that we do look for what we call TMF. Okay. I'm sure the water system staff are already well aware of this, but there was the Senate Bill 552 that just came out, and it does require small water systems to come up with drought solutions. And there's a bunch of different timelines and when they need to meet that by, but these are new requirements that are going to be, water systems are expected to meet. And this is, living in California, we have dry years and wet years. I think most people are familiar with that. And what do we do in the dry years? And this is to kind of address dealing and coming up with plans for those dry years. You can see backup supplies of water and stuff to ensure that communities have water. Okay, and that is my portion, so I will hand it back over to Omar.
Thank you, Ashley. So now I'm going to cover consolidation process and overview of the consolidation that the two systems have been working together with the State Water Board to basically initiate the consolidation. Currently the work is going, and I'm going to basically provide you with updates as where we are and what will be the next steps. So really the goals why we are here is at the end of the day, we want to make sure that all the customers, they have access to safe and affordable drinking water. That's our goal. And how we're going to get basically to that goal is, one of the solutions is consolidation. You have water system that provides compliant water to their customers, and you have a neighbor system that doesn't have that water quality. And consolidation could be as a long-term solution, because then you would have more ratepayers and a larger system that could provide for the entire community safe and affordable drinking water. We want to make sure that the necessary improvement for this consolidation be completed. Currently, the two water systems, they've been working, as I said, with the State Water Board. The planning phase is currently going, and hopefully at the end of the finish of that planning, it will be to construction, and the State Water Board provide funding for that effort. We want to also make sure that the community gets kind of engaged in this process through consolidation or other tool that we are going to use, which we will explain later on regarding administrator program. And we are here basically to make sure that the implementation of that long-term solution is implemented correctly, properly, and the system will remain sustainable for in the future. So if you look at the consolidation efforts back in 2016, Lake Morena VUs passed a resolution to pursue consolidation with Lake Morena, Lake Morena's Oak Shores. At that time, there was actually a TA assignment, technical assistance provider assignment to the project to look at consolidation. At the time, unfortunately, the TA assignment got cancelled. And that could be because the two water systems couldn't kind of get to the details of consolidation and agree to some terms. Again, in 2019, there was another resolution that was passed by Lake Morena VUs to pursue consolidation with Lake Morena Oak Shores. Right after, on November 12, 2019, the Division of Financial Assistance assigned a technical assistance basically provider to the project to complete a planning phase for the water system. Since then, TA provider Sac State has been working on the project. They retain a consultant NB5 and they are working on the planning phase. They completed the plan, the feasibility study, preliminary engineering report so far. And the next step is to complete plans and specs and basically submit the construction application to the Division of Financial Assistance. As you can see, it's a kind of quite long way that we are at the feasibility study preliminary engineering report after 3 years. But the expectation is moving forward with the streamlining the process and having the administrator on board. Hopefully this process could be basically goes faster, and within the next 1 year, 1 or 2 years, we get to the construction agreement so they could start the work, the actual work. We also issued a mandatory consolidation 6 months, kind of called voluntary consolidation negotiation period that we issued a month ago. We gave 2 water systems to negotiate consolidation agreement, and they reached an agreement within 6 months. Today is one of the statutory requirements for consolidation, mandatory consolidation, is holding public meeting. This is the first public meeting for that procedure and fulfill that requirement. There would be another public meeting in 6 months after the 2 water systems reach the agreement, which we will report out as the action that the State Water Board will take in terms of issuing the order or not. We also have the administrator order. That's something that we wanted to do for the main reason is when we get to the construction agreement, somebody has to manage the fund and construct the project. Unfortunately, neither of the 2 systems had the capacity to manage the project. So that's the reason that we are going with the administrator. Today we have our proposed administrator team here, and we will get to that session. Brian will go over. But the idea is by the time that we get to the construction funding agreement, we have the administrator in place that they could act on behalf of Lake Morena Views to manage the fund and construct the project. This is the map that I took from the feasibility study engineering report, preliminary engineering report. The idea is to connect 3 systems together. Lake Morena County Park, Lake Morena Oak Shores, and Lake Morena Views Mutual Water Company. They will be basically combined and create a new water system that will be called as Lake Morena Village Mutual Water Company. The 2 systems kind of agreed to that name, and that will come later on once the 3 systems they get combined and they cease to exist as public water systems, individual public water systems. Mandatory consolidation. What that is, basically, the State Water Board has the authority to order mandatory consolidation to systems that they meet these requirements. The subsumed system is a disadvantaged community. There is a documented water quality or quantity issue, which in this case, I would say the water quality issue is more highlighted. And also there is an adequate and sustainable water system nearby. State Water Board has the authority to order mandatory consolidation. However, as I said, for these two water systems, since the two water systems agreed to consolidate voluntarily, State Water Board would only take action in terms of ordering mandatory consolidation if there is a need. So once, as I said, once the water systems they get combined, there will be under one name as a water system that will provide service to the entire village community. And why the State Board is taking this action? So, as I said, the documented water quality issue, nitrate and uranium, that's the main driver. Also physical infrastructure deficiencies that we are hoping within this project, those deficiencies will be addressed and the combined water system will be compliant and also the infrastructure efficiency will be addressed. Technical, managerial and financial issues are another kind of reasons. In order to operate the system needs to have enough revenue, kind of has enough expertise on board to manage the system. And we know that, okay, with smaller system, that revenue probably is not making to do the improvement necessary to the system. So that a lot of small water systems, they have lack of TMF. So that's another issue that the State Water Board has determined that Lake Morena Views Mutual Water Company cannot liably provide safe and affordable water to its customers, and that's the basis to make the decision to go with the mandatory consolidation order. The process for consolidation mandatory consolidation process is issuing 6 months voluntary consolidation letter, which was issued, as I said, last month. Then there will be a first public meeting. That's why we are here today. One of the basic reasons is this first public meeting. There will be a 6 months period that will end at the end of that negotiation period stated in the letter that was sent to Lake Morena Views and Lake Morena Oak Shows. At that time, the deliverable will be the consolidation agreement between two entities. We will hold the second public meeting. We will provide updates to the community in terms of actions that we will take, whether to issue mandatory consolidation order or not. Since we finish the second public meeting, at any point, we can move forward with that order if needed. The water systems, since they are with the TA providers right now doing the planning, at the end of that, the project will go for construction. And we have basically proposed administrator that will manage the project for Lake Morena Views. The cost will be covered by the State Water Board. Technical assistance that's currently since 2019 being provided to Lake Morena Views. Also the capital improvement costs to improve the project. Those are the costs that will be covered by the State Water Board. There is also a TA that I believe currently is assigned for the legal services to Lake Morena Views. I believe it's UC Davis. And they are currently retained as needed to provide service. So with that, I would like to pass the mic to Brian Potter to go over the administrative process. Thank you.
Thank you, Omid. Let's see if I can handle all of these, my notes and everything. So my name is Brian Potter, like Omid had mentioned. I was a district engineer, similar to Ashley, for what was called the Tulare District in the Central Valley of California. Tulare County is just south of Fresno County. I did that for 3 years or 4 years, and then transferred over to this section, the SAFER unit, the Southern Engagement Unit. So my previous experience, I've been with the state for 15 years, the Division of Drinking Water, regulating public water systems, very similar to these two systems. Became a district engineer that oversaw staff that regulated public water systems. And I helped facilitate a lot of consolidation projects, dealt with a lot of water quality issues, and then had an opportunity to transfer to this position where that's our primary focus, is getting systems to work together, to consolidate, to solve water quality issues, to solve technical and managerial issues like Omid had referenced and Ashley had referenced earlier. So the portion I'm going to talk about tonight, this mic is hot, is the administrator overview. So Omid, we talked about the water systems and how they function, and also what is the consolidation process for the systems. And this is going to cover the administrator part, which is specific to Lake Morena Views Mutual Water Company, but does affect both communities because the goal of the project, the end goal, is to have one system, like you guys have already been working towards. So, did I go the wrong way? Down. Here we go. So what is a full scope administrator? So a full scope administrator is a person or entity that is appointed by the state and is authorized to exercise total and complete control of the designated water system. So that involves running the entire water system and making decisions on behalf of that water system. The administrator needs to have all the necessary licenses and certificates for the scope of their appointment, and I will talk about the scope of the appointment here shortly. So in each administrator appointment, there's certain needs that the water system has, and we try to align that appointment with the needs of the water system. They shall have sufficient experience for the scope of their appointment, again, matching their expertise with the system's needs. And they shall be subject to a background check. So the entity or the persons involved to make sure that everything is above board and there's no potential issues for the water systems. So administrator authority. Where does the state's authority come from? There's legislation that was passed that gives the state board authority to appoint an administrator. And it's applicable to public water systems or state small water systems that serve disadvantaged communities, and that the state board finds consistently fails to provide an adequate supply of safe and affordable drinking water. And some of that stuff this will sound very redundant to the points Omid was making about consolidation, and it is a little redundant, but that's the way the statute reads. There are certain parameters that the water systems need to meet before the state can have the ability to appoint an administrator. In the handouts, you can see there's a policy handbook and a link that's provided. It's in yellow text on the screen. It's in black and white on your handouts. But you can go to that link and review the state board's adopted administrator policy handbook. And this sets a wide variety of parameters and applicability and addresses different issues about appointing administrators. It's about a 15-page document, but you could get more information there. Hopefully we can answer your questions tonight regarding that in a appointment, but just wanted to point you to that resource. So the administrator appointment process, it's a little different, but very similar to the consolidation process. There's what is issued to the water system is a designation letter, and that comes from the state board that says, we are designating you meet the applicability criteria to be appointed administrator. So we issue a designation letter saying, hey, you've been designated as a system that can be appointed an administrator. And we issued that letter on January 20th, 2023. The next part of that process is doing a public meeting, and that public meeting needs to have a public notice to let you all know that a meeting is going to happen. So that was sent out on March 18th. Which we have a great turnout tonight. Thank you for coming. That means the notice was pretty effective in getting out to the community. And then that notice also starts a public comment period, and that is the period where you, the community members, can comment on the administrator appointment process, your feelings about it, your concerns, and the state board takes all those and reviews them. There's also a comment period after this presentation where we'll take your feedback as well. So that started with the public notice, and it brings us to where we're at tonight, the public meeting. And then the public comment period ends, like Omen said, in about a week, on April 25th. So if you don't make comments here tonight or make them on a card, you can also email us your comments, and there's an email address in the presentation that I'll talk about. And then the next step after that, well, there's an intermediate step, which is getting an administrator engaged to get familiar with the water system, understand the needs of the water system, and they develop a scope of work. And there's this period, kind of in this, after this, kind of now, and through the public comment period, where the administrator is going to evaluate what it was needed to do the administrator appointment, and if that administrator is willing to take on the appointment, the next step would be to actually appoint that administrator over the water system. And I'll talk about the appointment a little bit more and the proposed administrator in just a minute. So, here we are. The potential administrator for Lake Morena Views Mutual Water Company is Stantec Consulting Services. And they're a pretty large engineering firm that has lots of experience, and I'll go through that and then I'll introduce you to them because they're attending tonight. So they're a multidisciplinary team of experts in community engagement, so that's engaging, communicating, water resources planning, financing, groundwater management, drinking water treatment, and well-designed construction. So they have the whole understanding of what it takes to run a water system, not only from the management side, but the technical side, the construction side, all components of the water system. They have specialized experience working with economically distressed communities to address water resources challenges, so that would be like water quality infrastructure issues. And then they have they're specialized in public outreach to help mediate stakeholder discussions. So as the community has issues and concerns about their water system, they're also very effective at communicating what's going on, taking into community concerns, and working to address them. The administrator, so Stantec, they have a number of staff here. They're attending the meeting tonight. They're in this period of engaging with Lake Morena Views. They did a site visit earlier to see the water system. They're just doing their kind of due diligence about what the project may be needed and if they have the ability to take on the project. So they are going to prepare for the state board like estimate of what it costs to be the administrator for the water system, what the scope of work is, and then the state board, if Stantec's willing to take the job, the state board can appoint them as an administrator. And the administrator point of contact is Rihanna, how do you pronounce the last name? Bossum, thank you. And she is here tonight. And she would be the main point of contact for the customers of Lake Morena Views if the appointment is to go through and Stantec is able. So the administrator's scope of work and ultimate goals. The administrator will take on full administrative and managerial control of the water system. They will oversee and facilitate the process of consolidation. They will address the financial limitations of the water system and apply the necessary improvements to the water system. So like the infrastructure project that is needed that we talked about, they will help facilitate that project to go in place. And then they'll also keep the customers informed on the status of the consolidation, the improvement project, and they'll keep you all informed on a regular basis. Part of the administrator work is to develop a community accountability and engagement plan. So the administrator, once they are appointed, develops this plan within 90 days. That plan will outline the frequency of public meetings, the process for public meetings. Some of the simple requirements are providing a 10-day notice to the public to let them know a meeting is going to happen. And that way you all can attend and get updates on the status of the water system, decisions that are being made or that need to be made, and then also have the ability to provide feedback to the administrator. like the second bullet there, it's an opportunity for public comment. The goal of the administrator is to have community involvement. It's not just a siloed thing where they come in and they're this, they're an unknown entity that has control. The goal of the administrator is to be engaged with the community and help facilitate a long-term sustainable solution. They also will provide public access to records of the water system. So as they take over and have, the backlog of files and information, they will make that stuff available to the public on request. All right, another item that the administrator does is the post-administrator drinking water service plan. And this is just like you could say the roadmap to what will be the new consolidated water system with the infrastructure that's provided. So part of their work is to identify and evaluate technical, managerial, and financial issues. So what's going on currently and how do we address those? So the second is the plan to address those issues, what is needed. Identify and evaluate potential significant future issues. So a good example of that, although this is not the only example, is early in the presentation, we talked about Senate Bill SB 552 and the requirements that are in that bill with the timelines. They will look at things like that, or maybe future contaminants that the system should be concerned about and how they can address those. They will identify the needed resources for the water system. So not only do they need infrastructure, but do they need additional grants? Do they need to have more developed staff for what will be the new water system? Making sure that there's a proper board, making sure that the legal documents are in order. They just want to make sure that they have all the resources they need to be a good standing water system. So that is identify the needs there. They will evaluate the governance feasibility. In this case, both water systems have worked together and have kind of outlined a good plan of consolidation and what the new organization will look like. So the administrator will help facilitate implementation of that and work to address any issues. There's a lot that goes into the governance of an individual water system, and then when you combine them, there's issues that need to be addressed. They'll help facilitate that and make sure that the combined water system can be on a good path forward. And then lastly, they will evaluate feasibility of connecting to another, or consolidating with another water system. And that one, obviously, we've addressed already with the consolidation. So in this, the scope of the administrative goal would be facilitate the project and facilitate consolidation. So, next slide. Who pays for all of this work that needs to be done? All the people at Stantec are great, but they're not necessarily here pro bono, which I don't blame them. But that funding comes from the state board. So the state board has a number of different funding sources that will pay for Stantec's time and resources to be an administrator for Lake Morena Views. That covers salary and benefits of the administrator, administrative costs. So that's working space, phones. You can think of like facility costs for them. Legal and accounting and other similar managerial fees. So Stantec's a big organization, but if they have to consult with some outside parties, there's funding that also covers that. There's also funding that may be available, which is not may, in this case is available for the construction project and the planning project. Only discussed a lot of those already that have already been underway, but they will help facilitate the administrator applying to get those funds to make sure that, once the planning documents have been completed, so that's plans and specs, the construction, everything is in order that they can apply to the state for grants for those projects and then help facilitate the construction. And then there's also funding that may be available for ongoing operation and maintenance costs of Lake Morena Views kind of throughout the process. So they'll be looking at the financials, evaluating where there may be shortfalls, and there could be funding available to help shore those up. Stakeholder and community input. So that's a recurring theme in a lot of this, is wanting the community to be engaged in the entire project, both from the consolidation standpoint and the administrator standpoint. So in the engagement of Stantec, if they become an administrator with the community, is at those public meetings and at any time the community members have the opportunity to submit a petition to the state board for reversal or modification of the decision an administrator has made, or maybe propose a substitute to the administrator. So say if there's really some issues that the community feels is not being addressed, they could petition straight to the state board, for us to consider what is going on. Practically speaking, we work with Stantec across a number of administrator appointments. We work with them on those. We also work with the communities through the district office, as well as OMID's engagement with the water system staff. So our goal would be that, everybody is working well together, but we do know that projects can be complicated and there's lots of concerns that maybe aren't always apparent initially. So this allows you to, like I said, contact us directly to say, hey, there's issues going on that you need to be aware of, and we'd like the state board to maybe take some action as necessary. So for a specific decision that's made, the state board must receive that petition, or you could call it a complaint, within 30 days of an administrator's decision. So as the administrator has these regular meetings with the community, once a decision is made at one of those meetings, or they inform you that a decision is made, you have 30 days to file that with the state. But our goal is that the community is along with the process, and it's not just at these regular meetings, but if there's concerns, you can reach out to us. And the state board, for any specific, decision that you're petitioning, the state board will review and act on the petition based on the merits of the complaint. So there is a review and evaluation process that the state board does. Okay, what are the overall goals? It's a lot of the, again, maybe a little redundant, but the goal is still the same. Safe and reliable drinking water for the communities. To complete the necessary improvement projects for the communities, maintain public engagement, and then oversee the implementation of the long-term consolidation solution. So seeing the project to the end, at the conclusion of the project and all the scope of the administrator, the goal would be to hand it back over to what is the new public water system, Lake Morena Village, right? That's the name? Mutual Water Company. So that would be the goal, is that for Lake Morena Views, the governance is handed over to the now combined water system. So that concludes the main portions of our presentation, and we're going to get into the public comment period of questions. So this is an opportunity for you all to provide comments. You could provide them written and leave them with us. You could write them down and I can read them and then provide response back if necessary, or it can be verbal, and I'll talk about those details here. So we'd like to know your first name, last name, and what water system you're affiliated with. We'd like you to try to limit your comment or question to 3 minutes, just because with the number of people here, if everyone has a comment, we may be here all night if we just let it be free form. So we ask you guys to be mindful of the time. And I believe we'll have enough time to probably get through everything, but just be mindful of that. And we'll start that in just a sec. The next steps in closing. Okay, yeah, this will be after the comment period. So I'll leave this up. We can go ahead and start. What's that? Okay, one more. Other way. There we go. Thank you. Do you all want to take a couple-minute break to get water or use the restroom, or should we just roll into the comment period? I don't know if you all have opinions about that.
Yes.
Keep it going. Okay, great. Sorry, I have a 4-year-old, 5-year-old. Maybe it's just bathroom breaks are always on the phone, I guess. Okay, so with that, we could start the comment period. Is there anybody who would like to maybe ask the first question? Yes. Go ahead.
First question, but I'm going to break the rule about 3 minutes.
Okay. Can we?
My name is Karen Russell.
Karen Russell.
Karen Russell, and I'm the manager of Oak Shores.
Okay.
Okay, my first question is definitions. I need some help with definitions that when I'm talking to people and I'm not clear on exactly what these mean. What is the difference between an extension of service? I'm referring to the Safe Drinking Water Code. Okay. Refers to the extension of service and consolidation. What is the difference? Are we, talks about the extension of service with regard to private wells within the system, and then it talks about whether the extension of service would include private wells in the consolidation. I need to have it clear in my mind, what are we talking about here that involves private wells, the term extension of service, or consolidation? Can you separate those three things?
Yeah, I'll try my best to separate those, unless you'd like to take it. You want me to take it? All right, here we go. It kind of can be conflated, so it's a great question. So extension of service could have an applicability specific to maybe larger water systems where like full consolidation of the two communities. So let me define consolidation first. How about that? Full consolidation is to say you have two water systems with all the number of connections that are currently connected to each individual sources. The goal of a full consolidation is that the systems would be combined and there would be one entity that oversees all of it. In some scenarios where there could be a large system, say a city, and in a close proximity small water system of say like 30 connections, that small water system would consolidate into the entirety of that city, and it would be, San Diego, Public Utilities is just consolidated, a small mutual water company. And they would all become customers of San Diego. That is one example of a full consolidation of the entity, the large entity is already established. They do not have issues necessarily of their own that need to be immediately addressed. In scenarios like yours, where there are two systems that are of relatively similar size and small, both with some issues, the consolidation often looks like what we're talking about tonight. The taking of the two and making maybe one new entity. And that's what we're talking about here. So when we talk about consolidation, it's about those individual service connections of those two systems consolidating into one entity. Extension of service can apply to a lot of times in larger scenarios where you may wholesale, you see it a lot in LA, where you have large water entities, and you could still have some small communities, but for some reason, you're just offering an extension of service because maybe the system size is 1,500 connections, but they are getting an extension of service from this larger entity that maybe has like 30,000 connections. And there's enough management structure with that extension of service system where they can maintain some of their own entity through an extension of service. But it's not very common in my experience, and definitely not common amongst small water systems like we're talking about tonight. And then lastly, your question was on private wells that are not connected maybe to either. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. So our consolidation...
But within the boundaries.
But within the boundaries. Okay, that's a good clarification. Mm-hmm. We don't necessarily have authority to say those individual homes must connect to the larger entity that's forming. However, if there's those individual homes that are experiencing issues and would like to consolidate and the systems are willing, there can be a pathway for those to get funding as a part of the project to consolidate into the larger system.
And what would that funding entail? I mean, what would they need funding for?
Well, funding would be maybe the water systems have a service connection fee.
Okay.
So like a city, hey, I want to build a home, connect, or I have a home like right here and I want to connect. There's service connection fees that are associated.
Okay, so keeping this in just this situation, Lake Marina Views and Oak Shores, would individuals in our system, we have 7 homes that have wells.
Okay. And are connected, or they're individual?
Some are and some aren't.
Okay, some are.
And if they connect to the system, then they have to have a backflow preventer.
Right.
But will there be an assumed covering of the expense for someone in our system that had a well, has actively not been participating in our system, they've been using their own water, but they want to connect? Will they be automatically included in this consolidation? Is this something that has to be addressed individually as an extension of the consolidation expense-wise? Where do those people stand?
Let me try to unwind that to make sure I follow. So these people not connected have their own well. I know you mentioned
but they're right in down the street.
Right. So they can, I think a part of the process, if they were interested, they could reach out to one or both of the water systems to say, hey, as a part of the project, I would like to be consolidated, and kind of raising their hand, like maybe even applying for service or writing an email that says, we would like to be a part of this. And then we could incorporate that into the larger project. We do want to be mindful, though, of getting them involved sooner than later, because if there needs to be added distribution system ran out to that home, I don't know the distribution line specifically, but if, say, they're a quarter mile away, there's a main extension.
That would matter.
Yeah, okay, so fair enough. But they would need to still raise their hand and say, I want to be a part of the project, and make it known early on so we can.
And my thoughts are, in Oak Shores is intact. There's no real distribution line going down individual streets in this project for Oak Shores.
Right.
But there's homes down those streets that may not be connected to our system, that are within our Oak Shores community, that have a well, and in the past, when we did construction, I encouraged them to put in a meter connection, so if their well failed in the future, they would have access to it, and it wouldn't cost them anything during construction.
Right,
But I was,
most definitely. Okay.
see if somebody else wants to.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Then I'll get you.
we'll pause and we can come back. Is it any other comments or questions?
I was just gonna mention, I don't know what the boundary adjustment thing is after the fact, who's drawing it up, and who gets to oversee the boundary adjustment.
So
Right now, I'm looking at down in Lakeside, but it has to do with sewer. And a boundary adjustment for a single home down there now is going to cost over $22,000 after the fact.
right, that's very possible.
Just to redraw a map
Yeah, I understand.
for Sandag or whoever oversees it down there.
Yeah, so the goal of this project would be to establish the proper boundary of the single water system, and whatever is necessary to do that is covered under our funding. So, that's pretty broad. It's a broad statement because I don't know every little nuance of this community, and I apologize that I don't. There's just lots of systems I work with, and I don't know every detail. But the key would be is the people that are provided service or within the boundary currently, when it becomes one system, that boundary will be redrawn. It will have the proper filings with the county or LAFCO or whatever needs to happen, and the administrator can help facilitate those as part of the project to make sure that those things are addressed. And then if there's something where someone is way out of the boundary and it's that stuff we need to know about so we can figure out how to cost, but most often it's covered, so.
Yeah, because that wasn't around like 12, 14 years ago.
Yeah,
Now
yeah.
LAFCO is all of a sudden charging
Right.
an immense amount of money just to redraw a map for a single.
Correct.
residence.
And I'm not trying to be dodgy, but like I said, every case is specific, but generally speaking, those costs are covered under the project. But there could be nuances where that doesn't totally meet our funding criteria. So say, for example, there's a new development that's going to happen. Our funding can't cover new development. It's covering systems or individual homes or homes that are part of public water systems currently. So that's why I'm kind of being a little like.
I might be able to help with that. The only boundary adjustments that I know of that have been discussed in this, because we basically don't have any area to grow in. I mean, our neighbor is the Cleveland National Forest, and
Right.
they don't like us building houses out there. So, what the boundary adjustments that I've heard discussed have been with regard to establishing a loop so that you don't have a dead end. And I'm thinking over in Views, there was an area that would be a dead end, and it would be a house that's nearby, but not far. I mean, you could stand in Views and throw a rock over, and you'd be in that property. So it's nearby, but those people could come into the consolidation. They're so close, and they would help keep a loop going,
Yeah.
so you would have continuous flow of water.
Right.
But houses that are out a quarter of a mile, half a mile away, that isn't something that I've heard anybody discuss, and the majority of people are not interested. Even people, when talk about establishing a loop, they said, well, we don't even want a meter connection, even if you tell them, well, in the future, if your well failed, it would be handy, and no, I don't want to be a part of it, so.
Yeah. So that kind of speaks to a couple of things. Yeah, in terms of water quality, having loop systems does improve water quality because it allows that circulation to happen as opposed to just sitting dormant, after a long pipe run. So that's the physical component. But then when it comes to those, people that may want to be a part of the project, that's why it's important to know who they are as early as possible so the project, if it can be modified to accommodate. In this case, you're talking about people that are a quarter, maybe a half mile away that aren't interested at all. But if they were interested, we'd want to know, because there could be funding opportunities to include them in. And that would maybe change the boundary. Like we're already talking, needs to be changed, but that may also change.
I was just suggesting
Yeah,
if
yeah.
somebody needed to, it would be very wise to do it, yes, during this period, or
Right. No, it would be.
it's financially not feasible later.
Yeah.
We can't go too far out in any direction because it's a pressure issue.
Yeah, so
An elevation issue.
And that's exactly the component of like there's a funding challenge and there's also the technical challenges of how does that change the project. That's one of the things Stantec and the current engineer in NV5 are looking at is like what are the technical challenges and needs of the system. There's also a water supply concern. We're talking about treatment and what that costs and the amount of water that can be distributed to folks. So all those things come into play in the decision making. And I didn't catch your name and affiliation, but I think we would write it down just so.
Me, Brian Wicca,
Brian would.
yeah, Lake Morena Views Mutual's former president and board member.
Perfect. Taking notes, just because I like to document all the comments. All right, other comments? Yes?
Yes, I would like to nominate Lower Village. My name is Loa, L-O-A,
Hello.
Schmidt,
Schmidt?
and I want to know about, is our bill going to go up? Are we going to have to pay for Upper Village in this new construction? Because we've already got good water. So I don't have to pay for somebody else, we've already got good water and everything. You guys, saying, oh, it's going to make it better. Well, ours is already better.
So you're not a part of Oak Shores or Lakewood?
I'm in the Lower Village, Oak Shores.
Oak Shores.
Oak Shores.
Yeah.
And Oak Shores has a water quality problem, right?
No.
No?
Not that is.
Okay, sorry.
We got our nitrate system, we got all that.
Your nitrate
There's no
system's good.
problem.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm asking you, are they expecting us, our bill to go up to help pay for the Upper Village?
So, I have not seen any rate documentation prepared. Have you seen any information on costs on the, is it in the PR?
No, I have not. But as part of this project, the expectation is the State Water Board will provide a capital cost for the improvements. And in terms of the rates, there needs to be a rate study to see how the system would be sustainable to pay basically all the major components of the system during the operation life cycle of that component. So the expectation is with increasing the number of service connections, actually when we do those analysis, we will see that the rates would go down versus a system that has, for example, right now the system Oak Shores has 200 service connections. With adding 100, if you are paying for all the upfront costs for capital improvement, the expectation is if we do the rate study for both cases, the expectation is you would see a rate decrease. Don't quote me on this because I don't know currently what you are paying. But what I'm saying, if we compare two scenarios where Lake Morena Oak Shores remain on their own and you are paying X amount right now, but we need to make sure that X amount is true, basically rate right now. If it's a true rate, and when we combine two systems, we do another rate study, the expectation is the rate should go down. Because because of the economies of scale. Now you have more ratepayers, and especially with the county, when today we were visiting the water system, having a better water quality, the expectation is the cost may go down for the treatment system. So those are the things that needs to be analyzed. Not sure right now in the feasibility study preliminary engineering report those addressed, but definitely that is something that State Water Board could kind of request from the TA provider to do a rate study.
I'd like to add to, and then we'll jump over to the other comments. When it comes to rates, and we've got 3 or 4 now, good. What I find with a lot of small water systems is that the rate that is being charged, and I don't know your specific rates now and when they've been adjusted. The cost of, if you think of like a car, right? Like you buy a car and you have to do regular maintenance, but cars have gone up in cost incrementally over time. And we just go and pay them and pay the mechanic and buy the cars and, we just keep repeating that cycle as necessary. What is not common for small water systems, and I'm not saying specific to you, but I just don't know, but I think it's a good analogy, is water systems get built out when the homes were developed and the system was built, and they charge a really low rate. And that's because maybe the water quality was good and power was cheap and, and they just let it ride and they don't do the necessary maintenance over time. And that's not to say you don't, but like those rates often don't increase at the appropriate scale to the increased costs over time. So part of that analysis that Omen's talking about is they will look at the rates currently and look at the cost of the water system and say, is that sustainable? Will those rates cover us long term to cover the O&M costs, the chemical costs, whatever the costs are necessary to run the water system? And it will evaluate it currently and then, let you know, does it need to go up or down? But, like Owen said, assuming, and I know I'm repeating a little bit, but I think it's good to repeat, assuming that you guys are already at that threshold where you're charging enough already, adding the number of service connections should decrease the cost because of economies of scale. I've got a couple of hands. Did that answer your
Yeah, as
question?
long as it doesn't go up.
I believe I can clarify
I
it
mean,
for
why should I pay for somebody else's when we're already paying?
I believe I can clarify it for
Yeah, go
My
ahead.
name is Jim Edwards, I'm your president.
Hello.
And we currently have a positive cash flow.
Good.
We have a positive contingency fee. We have positive savings accounts.
Good.
We also, the last time I looked, charge $9 every 2 months less than Hughes does currently. And I understand they raise their rates.
The same amount of water?
Hmm?
The same amount of water?
Yeah,
But Hughes raised their rates.
yeah, but
No, for the
this
same
would be
amount
before
of
they
water.
raise their rates. So yes, we are solvent,
Good.
and we will remain that way.
Good.
You see the opposite.
And I think, these questions are not uncommon questions, even though I don't know all the specifics of these two systems. But they're common questions for all the small water systems we're dealing with, and the goal would be to keep the community engaged throughout the process. So you will eventually know what's happening to your rates. It wouldn't be that a surprise to you necessarily. Let's go here, and then we'll just jump around. Go ahead.
Hi, Bill Wallen, landlord in Upper Village since 2010. I have 3 properties, and I represented my tenants who aren't here, well, one or two. And while Brian was president, we had good water. We had filtered water. They mixed the 3 tanks, and almost always came under 10. Our filter failed. After using it for so many years, and suddenly, after we put it in, suddenly the state won't let us run it. And suddenly, from then, we haven't had good nitrates levels. And you guys come in and go ahead and filter water for us, but we still can't drink it. And my tenants are wondering, when is that going to stop? 1. And 2, it seems like to me that it's kind of an underhanded way to make our communities merge by saying that we can't provide good water quality, and yet we have until we were allowed to run the water filter that our community paid for.
So, are you familiar with the history on the water? Okay.
I definitely don't have all the background history on the filter or not because
We do, you can ask Brian.
the county used to oversee the view system, right? It's my understanding that the previous filter failed. wasn't that we said that no one could run it, it failed.
Right,
So you need to do replacement.
so we put a new one in.
So there's a new filter that's been put in, but it hasn't met all the requirements to be permitted.
And you guys have been dragging your feet for 2 years, the permitted process. Wouldn't you think if you care about people's quality of life,
So
that
we
you would go
care,
ahead and step up that permit process? Our filter failed, which creates a real bad problem for us. And you guys just like, whatever, that's what I got. That's what I kept getting from the water, the manager of the water. I mean, that's what they're being frustrated with. And those guys are volunteers, just like Brian was. Hey, volunteers and what they've had to deal with this, it's terrible. Well, there's a lot of people that don't want to pay their water bill because of it. And like I said, up until then, we were good. But there's nothing in here mentioning that the reason why we don't have good water is because we won't permit our filters.
I don't think the intent is to not permit the treatment. The idea is that the treatment needs to be proven as to be it would need to be a reliable treatment.
Turn it on. Let's go testing.
They're going to do a pilot study for that, to show that it is a reliable system.
Been sitting there for I don't know how long.
Yeah, over 2 years. Over 2 years.
Like I
You
said,
guys, are
I'm
you guys
not,
paying for all that water? Are we doing that? I don't even know. But somebody's paying for a lot of water. Should we follow the money? And what's the point? You know, we have a filter that we've already shown it works. Our guys tested it the next day and it filters fine. It's not rocket science.
I think there's components to treatment that like can be a tad bit oversimplified. When we permit water systems, Ashley, you can jump in, but when we permit water systems and having, this system was regulated by the county, correct, previously? Counties do not do a thorough job at regulating public water systems. They oftentimes don't ensure that the water system meets the minimum requirements. They don't make sure that the treatment plants are operated in a way that is sustainable long-term and is consistently providing water. There's a lot of things that go into it. The reason why the county handed over the program back to the state is because they're not able to do their job effectively. One of the challenges that Ashley faces, and I've experienced as well, is that the county's lack of oversight creates a false expectation on what is necessary for the treatment system. I agree with Ashley, we're not necessarily saying, no, you can't permit your system, but there are parameters that need to be put in place to make sure that that system is reliably operating. And I don't know the specifics about this system or the history, but part of it is pilot study to prove that it works, a level of redundancy because nitrate is an acute contaminant. There's a serious concern about, right now you're probably getting public notices that say your water exceeds the standard. If that treatment is not reliably operated and not reliably maintained, which is very common among small systems that counties used to oversee, someone could come to your community, and if that system is not operating properly within the spec and is regularly maintained, you have water that exceeds the standard that could cause an immediate health effect to pregnant nursing mothers, to infants under 6 months. Those are serious concerns. Go ahead.
I'd like you to
Speak about Sandy,
Brian
right?
lives right next door to it. He's the president. And he's the one that's been mixing the water to make sure we're under 10 inches. And for years, the government has been wanting the lower and upper villages to merge. And I'm not necessarily against that, but this lady here is like, I don't want to pay higher, because we don't know which village has more assets and liabilities. That's a very difficult thing to figure out. But the main thing is right now is that for the last 2 years, you guys haven't let us run that water, that filter, and it doesn't say anything about that in here.
Go, please, go ahead.
I am Wellman, I'm the president of the board now. Okay, the plan has been in place for 2 years. Yes, we've had, not these people, but prior to them, had different components they want on there to bring it up to par by their standards. Yes, it does work, but we can't run it without a permit. That's why it's not running. These people are actually going to put us into a pilot program. We're actually going to do the pilot program before they even come in. Ashley is overseeing that from the state level. I requested the county to step aside before so that the state can actually come in, because the county was not doing their job. Okay, now this, it will work. They have to do the permitting process, just like we have to do permits for everything else. And yes, it has been 2 years. Now, answer to one other question. Karen, what happened with this loan thing that may be forgiven later on that we were talking about, that may lower the rates actually too?
Well, everybody needs to remember the hardest thing to remember, and that is, this is a volleyball, and it's in the air, and it's still in the air. It hasn't landed yet. There's a lot of possibilities, and the chore of the boards of the two water companies together is to make sure that every single item that's floating around in the air, we get after. There was, last year, almost a year ago, there was an audit done of the State Water Board. And in that audit, it says very clearly that there should be, in the audit that was done of the State Water Board in the last year, it says very clearly that there should be loan forgiveness when small water companies are consolidated, in order for there to be an opportunity, and it doesn't use this is my words, an opportunity for those water companies to land squarely on their feet, provide water, and come out with a good billing structure that supports the community. We are an economically disadvantaged community. Our customers pay $96 every 2 months for water and operations. The base water usage is 1,500 cubic feet every 2 months. I do an analysis of the billing and the meter reading every single time, and we have 92% of our customers use 1,500 cubic feet or less. Everybody has adjusted. We don't have lawns. We know that we live in a community where water is an issue. The other part of our bill, $73 every 2 months for USDA payments on 2 loans. When we began the construction of our project, there wasn't a water board that these folks work for that was going out seeking people who were having trouble and writing grants for them to improve their water system. We didn't have that option. It wasn't available. But there were 2 gentlemen who are now good friends of mine, named Mike and Danny, who said, this is stupid. We have family that live in this community, both of these communities. We need better water. So they went after the Oak Shore situation, and they got USDA loans. At that time, 2006, 2007, 2008, you had to get 20% grant, 80% loan, or vice versa, different numbers depending on what month you got it and what the mood of the situation was federally. And that's what our payment is. That's what we're talking about. The fact that there's a possibility that we could get loan forgiveness. Loan forgiveness would be the greatest gift to this community, second only to the reconstruction of views and the consolidation of the 2 companies so that everybody had good drinking water. If that loan forgiveness goes, it would be amazing. It would be a miracle, because the water companies could have, you'd be able to establish a reserve, you'd be able to pay enough employees to maintain your system. It would be, but we're not there yet, folks. We're not there yet. The ball is still in the air, but we're watching it, every single one of us. I work for a great board. I'm not on the board of directors, I'm an employee. And we're not going to let this just get out of our hands. But and they know, these guys know about it. They know how I feel. I don't keep my feelings to myself, but just don't get panicky. It's going to work. It's going to work.
And the state board does, Ashton, hold this and I'll be running out of questions. State board does support consolidation. Your question was, it seems a little underhanded. And that, I mean, I think Ashley's, we're both relatively new to systems and what's going on in the past, but the board does support consolidation. Part of that is the grant funding, loan forgiveness component. There's grant funding for these construction projects because we've seen over all the small water systems in the state, a majority of the systems, we have this thing called the Human Rights Water List. A majority of Californians get good water, but the ones that don't are often in small, underserved, disadvantaged communities. And the state board is really advocating for those systems where they can physically consolidate, infuse money into the projects that would make those systems whole and sustainable. And that's the overall goal. And I understand the frustration of the past county oversight, the challenges with running the water system. It's definitely not lost on me, even though it can seem like, hey, we're the people coming in and saying, you need to go in this direction. But like our funding programs are specific to going in this direction. So that's kind of that avenue there. I want to grab some new comments. Is that okay? Did we have?
My name is Claudia Mullibrag. I'm with Lake Morena Views. We have not had safe, drinkable water for 3.5 years. Can you explain that? Why is the state just coming in at this time? And some of you may know me because I have emailed the state many times.
She sent lots of emails to the state asking for it. All right, go ahead, Ashley.
Obviously, like, you know, it does take some time to get in.
3.5 years?
Well, I can't speak to what the county did before we got the program. We took over the program July of last year. We didn't just take over your water systems, right? We got a ton of water systems from the county. And then, you know, a brand new district, we just created it. That means hiring brand new staff, getting them all trained up on all the requirements and the rules, and, you know, doing all of that. So I can only speak to since July when I took over and we created the district. I can't speak to the 2.5 years before that and why things weren't being addressed.
Would it be different if we were not a disadvantaged backcountry community?
I don't think so.
If we were a community like Alpine or maybe Blossom Valley or something like that. Because I know Poway had an issue with their water, and I think within a week that was resolved. But 3.5 years?
Yeah, and
Do you know what it's like to have water bottles sitting all over the place? But you can't cook with the water, you can't drink the water. I don't even give it to my small animals, no question. I just had a cat that died because of throat cancer. And because cats like to get in to the sink and drink the water if anything is in them, I'm beginning to wonder if 3.5 years that maybe she got in there and drank that water and maybe that's what cost it. 3.5 years?
I definitely understand the frustration.
I don't think you do.
I can definitely understand how a solution that you've been dealing with this for 3.5 years is not easy or enjoyable. Like I said, I can't speak to what the county was doing before I got the program. I can only speak to we're working on coming up with a solution. I will say in general, doing either treatment plants and doing a design and build on a treatment plant takes time, and same with doing a consolidation. It takes time to do all those things.
Well,
Some of the,
tell me how much longer it will be that we will have non-drinkable water.
the question was, how much longer will we have non-drinkable water?
I can't 100% answer that question because it
Will it be
somewhat,
another 3.5 years?
I don't know. There's the pilot study that they need to do a few things to get the pilot study, or things in place before they can start running the pilot program. Once they start running the pilot program and we're able to see that they're able to reliably treat the water, I mean, then we can work on doing that as an interim solution for them to be able to lift the notice. So I can't give a timeline because it's going to be us working together on getting that done.
Do you have any details of what that takes?
1 second. The question was, do we have any details on what that takes? But I want to add a little bit to this comment and then we'll answer yours. And I do want to get to others who have not had a chance to speak. 3.5 years is a long time.
Yes,
And
it is a long time.
we have a lot of systems, the state board has a lot of systems. I have dealt with systems that have had water quality issues for over 20 years. And that is not to minimize 3 years or, say that they're in a worse position. Some of the challenges have been around small communities. The state, unfortunately, and we're part of messengers from the state, obviously we represent the state, has limitations with the way we can get funding out to make sure that fraud doesn't happen, to make sure that the systems that need help are getting the proper help from the right people. And a lot of those create restraints on how fast that money flows. And there was an audit that was done that says the state board largely does not do a great job at getting money out fast enough. And that was done by an auditor, and I will agree, I've been a part of many projects that take time. And they're working to solve the way to get money out more quickly. But there have been things in my 15-year career here that didn't exist before for small water systems. Technical assistance, which has already been engaging, did not exist. It was a lot of small water system, you figure it out, you come to the state and apply for money, and we'll give you refund, or not refunds, the proper term is reimbursement, for you spending money out of your pocket. But the challenge is small water systems didn't have that. And over my 15 years, and I know this doesn't feel good to hear, but I just want to be transparent a little bit, in some moderate improvements that have happened, and I think will continue to go forward, is the state got TA involved where we can fund people to come and assist as soon as possible. Also, the encouragement of consolidations where communities can get together and make better, governance structures, larger systems to where they have a little bit more resources to help facilitate the process. Because the state struggled, and the county definitely is very disengaged in this. Counties I've experienced where they're not going to try to help facilitate solutions. So there is a lot of resources that are being provided to communities that were not there 5 years ago, 10 years ago, definitely not 15 years ago. But still, you're right, 3.5 years is a long time for a solution. And projects, while they do take time, there is the bureaucratic issues that we're trying to work through as well. I'll grab your comment, but let's go here because we haven't had a chance.
Okay, my name's Jamie Bachman.
One second.
My name's Jamie Bachman, and I'm just a shareholder over in the lower district. And it sounds like the question about if the rates are going to get raised or not is I don't know yet, right?
Yeah.
And also the question about how long is this going to take is still an I don't know. And I can understand why you don't know. But what I wanted to ask, I really wanted to ask a favor, and that is the next meeting that we have here, I hope it'll be fairly soon. Could you update us, give us an update on a timeline when the upper district, and there are residents and our neighbors too. We always say upper district, lower district, but we're all friends and neighbors. When will they get water? And when will that system get fixed? And what will the rates be? I know you can't say right now, but we do need those answers because I think we all just want, we want water that's drinkable, but we want to have enough water too. And it's kind of a scary thing when we talk about pulling two systems together. When the lower district, we've kind of paid our dues. And Karen kind of went through the whole village, the lower village, and got all the pipes and everything, fixed. The upper district still needs, from what I hear, they need pipes, they need tanks, they need a lot of things still. And we want that for them. We want that for our whole community. So maybe the next time that we meet, you guys could have a timeline and maybe answer those questions.
Yeah.
That's something that we can, work on coming up with the timeline.
Yeah, and I think maybe no necessarily promises on the rate study, because there's a level of work that needs to be done about the whole infrastructure project to look at like what entire rates will need to be. But the goal of all of this is to make sure that the community can be reliably informed regularly on the whole process. So we've got a couple new hands.
May I clarify the point of order?
Yeah, you can clarify a point, and then I'll jump right here and
As far as water capacity, we have received a grant and are in the process of acquiring an additional well. In addition, when the county park is brought into the system, their highest producing well will also be added to the system, which will increase our water capacity.
we'll jump over here and then I'll jump to you.
Sam Lee for Oak Shores. I just had a question on your presentation here. You showed us tying into the county park system also. That was part of this whole consolidation. I know the county at times in the past has kind of fought us a little bit. I think I'm getting their water. And, you know, I'm concerned about the amount of water that we've got. Certain years, the water, the wells drop, and we get too many people on those systems, we're going to run out of water. Bottom line, we live in a desert here. I don't care what anybody says. So that's what I'm concerned about. Are we going to have enough water to do all of this?
I think adding in the county well will definitely help add in other sources of supply. Plus, there are a few other sources of water that are being brought in as part of this consolidation overall project. So I think that will add to the quantity available.
I think it also stretches the importance over time. Conservation, kind of globally, which a lot of steps have been taken, but we see that with a lot of our small systems. Even with the large amount of rain that we've had in areas that I'm very familiar with, that water, you know, fills dams, runs out, and it doesn't percolate fast enough into the ground so it can recharge the basin. So, I mean, even though we've had a pretty wet year, it's been pretty wet down here as well, it doesn't necessarily mean we don't need to keep it on conservation.
I think everybody in the system does a very good job of conserving. A lot of people don't have lawns. We use native vegetation. I mean, you know, it's just the type of thing that most people that live up here know you have to conserve the water because we don't have a ton of it up here. You know, so, but I would like to make sure we get plenty of it.
Yeah, and that's a concern every system's trying to solve around the state. Just jump here.
So I just wanted to mention when Brian was running it and we also had Ben, we were trying to save money. And Ben loaned our community money from his pocket so we put in solar. And we have solar installed. And that could be our, you know, fail-safe if power goes down. We have off-grid system there. So, yeah, there's a lot of pipes that you need to be replaced, and we've got our infrastructure, but I don't think we have a lot of debt. So, like, measuring, like, the values of, it's gonna be kind of difficult. I know, but I wanted to let you know, and also, my question to the state is, can you, because of everybody's tired of this dirty water, what can you do to expedite? Because I haven't heard any details from Wellman, like, well, we have to do this. All I've heard is they won't permit. What is the actual things that they want us to do?
That's the pilot program and bringing it up to par with the wiring and stuff that they want.
But tell me, like, a detail, like, a wiring that
You
they
come by
want.
the plant and I'll show you.
Oh, no, tell
One of the
me
things is like a nitrate analyzer and installing that.
a nitrate analyzer.
Yes.
Okay. And how much is that?
We already have it.
You already have it.
It needs to be installed though.
And
It needs to be put in place and then Boyd has to come out from the Boyd has to come out from the well service to hook it up to the relay so it cuts off the pumps. This is per Sean. This was put in after the fact.
okay,
The plant's been there for 2 years.
right.
He added this on afterwards. He added on 2 gauges. We had to go back and redo them. Now I've got to put in a spool, which this connects the water system. This wasn't all there before, this has all been added on just before she came on board.
Right.
So these things all have to be done, and then she can start the pilot program. This is what MD5 is going to be doing. It'll take 3 months during that time frame. The water, I am not going to say it's permittable, but it will be going through the system, and then a permit will be offered after it's gone through the system for 3 months, and they reach the perlite to see where it maxes out.
So I think this information that you're talking about now should be public knowledge to everybody in Upper Village.
I
so that
avoid all
they
of them
know.
to the meeting all the time.
No,
They
but
come.
no, really published, because people are suffering, and they need to know, like, one day maybe you're gonna get, and wanna know the
I understand
project.
that. Farron, how long was your system down before you get it up to par?
2014,
And when did it start?
1932.
Right. I mean, just like transparency,
So,
that's what I'd like.
Everything we're doing here, I asked these people to come in, and they're not gonna cost us anything. That's why we're doing it. There's no loans involved.
Yeah, that's
That's why we're doing this. And they're gonna replace all the piping, all the valves. We're getting tanks done now, everything.
I see that you're for, and
That's what gotta be done. I'm living in the village too, so I'm in the same situation you are.
I'm just trying to, I'm back to the other thing. I'd like transparency of what it's gonna take to get our Upper Village nitrate-free again. And we used to be,
So I have a question for you. Where would you like that information published?
to every,
Like a mailer?
in the mail.
Email?
I think one of the things that administrator will jump in, that administrator is going to help with the communication to the community. Where you may feel a gap, that administrator can help facilitate getting information out. So that is hopefully addressed with the administrator. Go ahead.
Before the administrator comes in, the plan should be up and running. So,
So he said before the administrator is running, or up and going at time, that hopefully that plan should be
So it
running.
could be months,
Could be a few months. It sounds
at least 4 months, at least.
could be 4 months.
4 months-ish.
Would there be a budget analysis out before the administrator comes in? I think everybody really wants to know what the rates.
Yeah,
changes may be.
I don't think there's going to be a budget analysis that will be done before the administrator, but that will be one of the tasks for the administrator to look into and do the research. Just being honest.
I'm actually kind of for this as long as the loan forgiveness is put in place. So we don't have to adopt the lowest loans, and construction costs and grants for us would increase because of the amount of meters
Yeah,
to be able to do the valve upgrades and the backup booster pumps, what we need on a generator.
right. I want to jump to this comment, but I will say to that, like, that is one of the roles of the administrator, getting in is assessing and assisting in what the full consolidation looks like to make sure that the components are covered under grant, the loan forgiveness is ironed out, and that the public collectively has the information about that, so you will know and can be informed of what's going on. Sorry, I want to jump to this comment because you've been patiently waiting for a long time.
Thank you. First, I just want to thank you guys for your time today and answering all of our questions. I have a question about the administrative funding and the consolidation funding. There's a section here where it says funding may be available for certain things. What happens if that funding is not available?
Great question. The may is more of a caveat for the presentation because this is a template that we grab. In the case that we're talking about, all of the costs that we've discussed are covered under our funding program. And we've already made efforts and been in communication with the water systems, as you all can tell, about kind of the path forward for both of them. So that's grant funding for the project, that's grant funding for the administrator, the component of loan forgiveness on a completed consolidation. All of that stuff is eligible. The reason why we include may is sometimes there's things that are brought up that are outside of the scope of our funding. So say it was, and it's not going to apply here, and I apologize, this is a rough analogy or a rough example. In some consolidation projects, there's annexations to cities that take place, but our funding can't fund new roads and curb and gutter and other things. So the may is the caveat to say, hey, that stuff, which under our funding policies is not allowed, we cannot fund. But for the stuff we've been talking here, I would say all of it is 100% grant. But obviously there's nuances, and we'll go through if there's any items that come up, we address. But largely speaking, there's 100% grant for all of the components we're talking about here. Great. Other comments? I'm in the middle. Coming back here. Yeah, grants are great if you ask me, but question or just waiting? Okay. Yes.
One question. Everybody's asking about rates. Now, we can't give a rate until we actually merge, and that's not going to happen until all the construction is finished, correct? Talking about
And
where
everybody needs to remember, Wellman, that those of us that are sitting on the
Right.
board, that are gonna be sitting down with these folks
right.
and hammering this out, we're paying this bill too.
That's correct.
And, you know, I'm living on a fixed income. And I don't want anything to be and so I'm fighting the same battle. So, you know, we're on your side. When it comes to rates, we're on your side. We're definitely not gonna go, listen, you guys, you gotta back us on this. We gotta raise these rates for $20 a billing. And no, you know.
And I don't want higher rates, I can tell you that right now, because Karen takes over, I'm screwed.
The goal of Lower Village is paying less than the Upper Village right now. And that's with our loans.
Yeah, the goal of the analysis and all of this is that a rate study can be done, and like I said, it looks at the entirety of the systems with all the different issues and all the different liabilities, and can say like, hey, where are you at and where do you need to be, not only for now but in the future. And it's something that will be communicated to all the community members via either a meeting with the administrator or a meeting with both boards. Like I said, the rate stuff won't be probably available by the next time we have our second meeting, but we'll do our best to keep you all informed as best we can. Got a comment in the back.
Hi, Hillary Ward from the Upper Village, and my question is for the future when it merges, who is going to be overseeing the new company?
That's a great question. My understanding, you can correct me if I'm wrong, so you have 2 boards currently, and those boards probably have 5 members? 3 per things like 3 and 3. The new water system, like Morena Village, will have, I understand, 5 board members. So we haven't worked through the details on like, will there be a vote at that time when that new mutual is set up? Will an initial vote happen? I'm not totally sure there. Mike, do you know from your experience? We're not sure yet. We'll work through those issues to make sure that there's a proper process that's followed. So it's...
That's actually in our merger papers that we've already talked about.
Perfect. There's merger papers. Let's hear about that.
Did we agree that there was going to be 2 board members come over temporarily, and then we're going to have an election after 90 days? So that's what's going to happen. There'll be 5 board members.
Within 90 days.
Within 90 days, we'll have an election.
There's a component that, I was talking to Mike previously. We've seen, I've seen where there was a new CSD that was established in Tulare County, where it took, the county took over a water system in the form of a receivership. A little analogous to an administrator, but still different. They ran that water system for 9 years, and then the state got involved to help them set up a new CSD for that system and a system that was going to consolidate. Those 2 systems were called Seville and Yetum. They were independent. So the county set up the board of the new Seville Yetum CSD first, and there was no facilities assigned to them. They weren't running the water system, but it got the organization structure set up prior to the completed project. I don't know if that will be applicable here, but that's stuff that administrators is going to help both water systems as that new entity needs to be set up and take place, the proper timing, what that will look like. It sounds like the initial agreement is within 90 days, but there's that component of when is the project completed, when is the consolidation made, so all of it has to line out, and we want to make sure, like I said over and over, that you all are informed and understand what's going on in the process, and that, legal counsel is included, both systems are protected in their current state, but then also forward. So. Yes. Hold on one sec.
Mitch Wingfield from Lower Village. After tonight, what gets started?
After tonight, what gets started? So we're currently, that's a great transition. Are we going to have other comments? Because I'll jump into the next steps right now.
One more question.
Oh, we'll get to that question. So what happens? Sorry, jumping back and forth. So there's already been a lot of work that has been done on both boards' behalf. There's the preliminary engineering report that needs to be finalized or has been finalized. Needs to be. It's near. So it's a draft. There's been comments. So that will get finalized, and then they'll start working on a process to finalize a construction application. And that application comes to the state, and that needs to include the consolidation agreement, plans and specs for the project, and a number of other items. That's one thing that needs to be done. What's that? Not quite yet. That's one component. Another component is the administrator appointment. So where we're at with that is we've had the public meeting tonight. The comment period will close. Stantec is going to, they did the site walk today. They're going to prepare what we'll call their administrator assessment or scope of work that will say, hey, these are the items that we need to do. This is what the cost will be. And then we'll work to appoint them as the administrator who will step into the process that's already going on in this project and help facilitate it to its end. The administrator appointment will likely happen, assuming everything goes smoothly, probably late summer, early fall. There's a number of items I don't want to get into too much, but there's a master contract that Stantec has that needs to get modified by our Division of Financial Assistance, because Stantec isn't just potentially being an administrator here, but also a number of systems where we've requested Stantec's assistance. So that appointment will come likely at that time, but we'll still work on getting the treatment plant kind of piloted and ready to go in the next 3 and 4 months, continuing work on getting that preliminary engineering report finalized and progressing the project. So there's a number of components that are still going on from even tonight, even previously forward. So it is going forward. We are moving forward with those items. Mike, you can.
I'm just curious if the boards are
Maybe the boards have some things to share about what's happening right next.
Oh yeah, do you want to share anything that you guys are doing that I maybe missed, or
I haven't been doing anything for years.
just relax? Okay, perfect.
When paying our water bill. You should know that they would be a firm that did shores, so it's very related to the area.
Yeah, so NV5 or Nolte Vertical 5 is the name of the engineering firm that did the nitrate plant at Oak Shores.
They did the whole thing.
They did the whole thing,
13
yeah.
years,
13.
13 years of five separate construction projects. They were the engineers for the whole thing.
Right. So they're very familiar with this area. They're very familiar with Oak Shores. They've been working on the preliminary engineering report for this project. So they're very familiar with this area. Yes.
Upper and lower water district?
Upper and lower. Here, let me walk around. Upper and lower water district.
She was never on the line.
We have been here and Lower Village, we did a great job at getting it all set up. We paid our dues. I'm concerned that the Upper Village hasn't done what they should be doing, and it's weighing on my mind. And I just recently purchased property up there in 2019, and we need to consolidate, but not to ruin the Lower Village. Because we did pay our dues, so something's got to give something.
Yeah, the goal of all of it is to benefit both communities. There's the grant forgiveness component, there's the infrastructure component, and the economies of scale component. And while it may feel like we have done, Oak Shores has done a good job, and we've taken care of things, and maybe you feel like they haven't, I think the goal is not necessarily look backwards, but to look forwards and say, what is the common good for all of the community that is, you know, your neighbors and family and friends? And how can we create a combined system that has mutual benefit and that can be sustainable for all of you long term? Because there's, I mean, even adding accounting and a source of supply component is a benefit to the community. There's lots of different avenues where there's added benefit. And hopefully, and I think very much so, that there's a net benefit at the end of this project. So that's the goal, although I understand the concern. You had
Just a couple more questions. Mainly about your state, right?
Yes.
Okay, so state water board is bringing in Stantec. I was wondering where Stantec is located, where the closest office is in regards to being able to service.
Micro 40.
Because I noticed the 909 area code there.
Hi everyone, yeah, my name is Mike Antos, I work at Stantec. I'm the principal in our company that's working on the SAFER program all across California, so it's really nice to be in your community today. It's beautiful here. I come down from Pasadena, so it's a bit of a haul from Los Angeles County, and this is a beautiful place to be, so I envy all of you that. We have an office in San Diego that's serving you. I have two of my colleagues here who will be the engineering team on this effort, so they'll be coming from San Diego.
Where?
City Up, right?
Yeah, City Up. It's near Mission Valley area.
Okay.
So some of us will be coming from Pasadena when we need to be here in person, and some will be from San Diego, but we have expertise that's sort of scattered all across California.
The other thing would be as far as hiring local people. I mean, are we looking at keeping existing people that are doing the testing work and stuff like that are already at the water districts, or are you guys
So
just outsource everything?
So two ways to answer the question. One is that it's our expectation that the staff at both of for one thing, our authority currently doesn't reach Oak Shores at all. So we'll be working in partnership with Oak Shores as the representative of Views. So at Views, there's no reason for us to change staff. So the staff will all remain the same. Part of our approach as Stantec working in communities like yours is that we hope some of the resources that are made available to us by the state can stay here in the community. So having someone or an organization that's already in the community supporting us in our engagement with all of you is one of the things that we're going to be looking for as we start developing our process.
Yeah, I was just wondering if somebody's going to get paid a hell of a lot of windshield time every week, you know, to come up here and go down. Right?
It's our hope to not do that.
Because I don't know what your shop rate is. I don't know if you guys discussed that one or not.
Well, I understand where you're headed, and I love that you're doing it with a smile. It's our hope to not, you know, our goal here is not to like make bank off of your community. Like our hope is to support your desire to have a sustainable water source over the long term and work together as a community to see that. So it's really our commitment to try to involve local partners, continue to pay local staff using the funds that are available, either from the system or from the state. The goal here is really, this is about your community and your community's hopes for the future. And our job is just helping bring that state capacity to bear on the decisions that all of you make together.
Yeah, as long as your bill's picked up by the state, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I will add that in the state of California, there's 400 systems that are failing water quality standards of the 7,500 systems, and half of that, 3,500-ish communities, 400 communities are failing to provide safe drinking water. Our administrator program at large is going to have around, in the near future, 30-ish assignments. So one, the state board is very interested in Stantec coming in, doing a good job, and then getting out so they could go to the next assignment, because the list is really long for water systems that need this type of assistance. So yes, the state covers it, but yes, it's a concern too that Mike and his team are efficient with their time and that they're paid appropriately. And then we want to get this project done so we can move to the next one and then move to the next one, because there's more than enough work in the state that needs to be done.
There was one more answer to the question this gentleman asked over here.
Yeah.
We do have another project going on. The tanks will be done. They're actually been permitted, and we're putting them out for bid now. That will be done before the administrator comes in. Hopefully completed by then.
That's the goal.
You water tanks?
Yeah, water tanks. So, okay, I think we're pushing close to the 2-hour mark. Are there any last comments before I could talk about couple of slides we have left. Going once, going twice. I heard someone do auctioneering. Anyway, okay, let's jump to the next steps real quick. Great questions. I appreciate everybody for being engaged through that part and being patient with your time. Okay, so the next steps in closing. So the public comment deadline, so you all can submit comments via email to us or mail, or you can give us a call. It's in the slide packet on this slide next step, so you can mail OMID, and the address is provided there. You can also email us at the DW-SoCalEngagement@waterworks.ca.gov, or you could call, and I believe, is that your direct line, OMID? That's OMID's direct line. So you can get a hold of us and leave your comment. And the comment period, officially closes April 25th, but, if you need to reach out and provide some feedback or comments, we can still accept those after that time period. We have an FAQ, so frequently asked questions. Some of them may be similar to what we talked about tonight, but you could visit that FAQ at that website that's provided in the presentation. So those are the immediate next steps. And like I said, those are the next steps related to our process, but there's a lot of next steps that are, like we said, there's a lot of work that's already being done. There's work that's going to be done in the near term and in the long term. There's lots of things going on. So this is just one of the components, and we appreciate your time and appreciate the church for opening their facility for us to have this meeting. That was great. And with that, we'll conclude our meeting tonight. Thank you, everybody.